Alright guys, what is up? We're back again with the Dart build. This is going to be part 2 of the series of the 360 engine swap. But basically what ended up happening was I took the car down to Ocean City Cruise Week, and the car made it down there fine, and then the charging system stopped working, so my battery was no longer getting charged, and it drained it, and the car left me on the side of the road driving back from Cruise Week. So that was fun. That was about a 4-hour tow. But so today we're going to figure out why the charging system doesn't work and how to fix it, because there's really no point in going forward with the V8 swap until the charging system's fixed. Otherwise you'd put the V8 in and it would just still have the charging problem, because I'm planning to use a lot of the same wiring. I don't really want to butcher the car too much. The point of it is to not molest the most amount of items on the car that I can. I want to kind of leave it unmolested other than the engine swap. So let's get right into it and I'll show you the problem. Okay, so we're inside the Dart. We're going to start it up so I can show you guys the voltage issue. Okay, so the first thing you'll probably notice is our ammeter gauge is no longer working. It should be showing us some type of draw or some amps on the charging system right now. We have nothing. Literally the needle is just stuck in the middle. Tapping it does nothing. These gauges are also shit because they're known to catch on fire. So that's kind of our first hint. So now moving out into the engine bay, we're gonna go ahead and test voltage on the alternator. We're gonna put it on direct current. There we go. And now we want to check out the alternator output voltage on the stud. So we're gonna find a good ground back here, and then we are going to get our lead on that guy. And we have 12.23 volts on the meter. Ideally, we should have 14 volts or higher. 14.2 to 14.5 is ideal. So we know the alternator is not putting out the amount of volts it should. Okay, coming back to the battery now, we're gonna test charging system voltage back here. It's not gonna change, but I'm just doing it for sake of being thorough. We also have 12.36 volts, you know, it's going to fluctuate, 12.29, 12.31. So our charging system right now is inoperative. So now we need to figure out why. And the alternator was replaced. Alright, so we're underneath the dash of the car now. And these are all the fuses it has. You can see it's got radio, heat, AC, cigar, lighter, tail light, and instrument. So I'm going to go ahead and put the meter on ohm check, and we're going to check these for continuity or low ohms, so we know the circuit's good. And then I'll get back to you. I can't really have the camera down here and check them at the same time. Okay guys, so I just got done ohming all these out, and while I was under here I discovered the cigar lighter fuse is blown, which is not needed for the alternator. I don't even think this thing has an alternator circuit fuse, just a fusible link. So checking this is probably pointless, but that would probably explain why my cigar lighter does not work. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to test the field circuit on the alternator. We're going to do this by going to resistance. Touch the probes together. Oh, well, we actually got, okay, we got like 0.3 ohms through our leads. So that's just how we know there's air in the multimeter. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the green field wire off the back, and we're going to check the alternator to make sure this is not an open circuit. We got 15.4 ohms through the field, so that's good. We want to see resistance through here. If you have an open circuit, your alternator is bad. This alternator is brand new from AutoZone, which is shit, but there should be no reason that the alternator's bad. We're just testing it for sake. So we'll hook this back up. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to start the car, and we are going to try and ground the field terminals manually with wiring that I've hooked up to the car's body here. It's grounded to the chassis. I've scraped off some paint under here, and we got these 2 wires that we can touch to the back and see if we can get the voltage to go up to 14. Because at this point, we're trying to nail down why exactly the charging system doesn't work. So we'll do this. If we have good results here, we can move on. Let me know when we're...
Yeah, you're good now.
All right, we're good. So we're going to be back on voltage direct current. I'm just going to verify to you guys that the alternator is continuing to put out the wrong amount of volts. So there's the output stud. Oh, hang on. You got to have good ground for this, guys, or it doesn't work. Okay, we got 12.24 volts. That's wrong. We want to see at least 14 volts on this meter. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and manually ground the alternator. I don't know what the fuck will happen. So we're just going to take one of these guys and touch it to the green stud on the back. Do not touch to your power stud. Do not do that. That will be bad. Okay. Hang on here, guys. So the only way we'll know it's working is if we have the meter ready. While we do that,
Give me the...
I'm going to have my assistant hold the ground. Go ahead and hold the ground onto, that's the black wire, hold it onto that scratch metal up there. Okay. He's holding the ground. I'm going to come in again. Move that probe around some. Oh. It would help if I went to the output stud. Move the probe around. Move your probe. Just hold it somewhere. Hold it. Okay, so grounding out our field wire is doing nothing. The next step, I'm going to pull off the live wire. We're going to pull the green wire off. Car's continuing to run. We're going to try touching the green wire to the other field terminal here. Let's try this again. We're going to get the meter on it. .22 volts. So we still don't have a proper reading. That tells me we have other issues in our charging system. Okay guys, so after verifying that the alternator is good, we're not grounding out the field circuit correctly, there's something else going on in our charging system circuit. And if I had the diagram to pull up, I could show you the way that they do it on the old Mopars is retarded. The ammeter gauge is actually part of the charging circuit. But before we go to the ammeter gauge, these bulkhead connectors here are famous for corroding out. So that's the black connectors here. This little tin box is your starter relay. Jiggle everything around, make sure the connections are all tight. They are. This thing here, labeled fusible link, you can kind of see it in yellow, is the thing that it's basically acts like a giant fuse and it melts if the circuit gets too hot. But if this was bad, you wouldn't have any power in the car whatsoever. So we could pretty much bet our fusible link's in decent shape. But we'll start pulling off. What I'd like to do is start pulling off bulkhead connectors and looking inside them to see what they look like. All right, so we're back. We're gonna start fishing the bulkhead connectors off here. You gotta kind of pry out on them and wiggle to get them to move. There we go. There's one. I'm just gonna go ahead and take them all off, guys. You do want to be somewhat careful with these, because you gotta remember it's like 60-year-old fucking plastic, and it's probably not hard to break. So we'll take them all off here. Perfect. She worked out a lot better than I thought it would. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take a look inside of all of these. If you point the camera at the charging wire on the back of our alternator, you'll see it's this, I think it's about 10 gauge wire. And what it does, it runs up along the side here into this wiring loom. And we should be able to see it come out right here. So this is the bulkhead connector that has the alternator terminal in it. We can see the male terminal looks fine, a little bit of corrosion. Somebody put dielectric grease in here, so that's why it's sticky looking. And if we look here on the female side, let me see if I can grab a light, see better. Grab a pick. We'll pick out some of the gunk that's in there. Just we're looking for burn marks in here. So the one for the charging circuit will be this guy. So that connector doesn't look burned. It just has goop in there from where the dielectric grease was. That doesn't appear to be an issue. Because looking at the male side, actually it'll be this side here. Looking at the male side, you can see this one. You can see a little bit of green on the copper connector where it's tarnished or started to oxidize, but that's not really enough to prevent good contact. So the next step will be bypassing the ammeter gauge and taking that out of the circuit. So we'll move on to that. You can see, we'll just look at the rest of the bulkhead connectors here. Those all look to be decent, nothing's burned. Those look to be decent, nothing's burned in there. And then these also look to be decent. So we'll move on to the next step here. Alright guys, so we just got done looking behind the dash, and the ammeter gauge on this car has actually already been bypassed by somebody. So the ammeter gauge is already out of the equation. So that eliminates that. So we just wasted about half an hour dicking around with that. So the next step to isolate between the alternator and the voltage regulator, which is this black box back here, is the step we did earlier. And that's going to be where we have our ground wires connected to chassis ground. The battery on this car is in the trunk, so it's a little bit hard to go from alternator field wire to the battery. It'd have to be a long fucking wire, so we're just jumping from chassis ground to field wire ground, because our battery's obviously grounded to the body of the car. So it's the same principle, it's just we're not going directly to negative on the battery. So what we're gonna do is, when this field wire gets grounded out, the alternator should have loaded up by now. You should have heard the engine increase in RPM and the alternator load up. And because we did that earlier, you want to go ahead and hold this over here for me. I'm going to have the cameraman hold my ground. Just get a nice ground up there. We'll verify the battery voltage here. So 12.2, we're not charging. So when I touch this ground wire to the field terminal, we should have grounded the alternator and we should have got around 14 volts by now. So So that tells me, doesn't matter what side we do, either or field. We'll even try the other one because I got two. That tells me it's the voltage regulator. The alternator's fine. It was literally just replaced. Not to say new parts can't be faulty, but this thing is working as it should. Our voltage regulator is faulty, so at this point, we got to try a new voltage regulator. All right, so we just got done removing the voltage regulator, and I believe this to be the original regulator because look what it says. Made in the USA. You never see that shit anymore. And go ahead and rattle it for me. Hear that, guys? It's bad internally. And I don't believe they actually make the voltage regulators like this anymore. I believe they call this a mechanical style voltage regulator, where things are actually moving inside of it versus a solid state electric one where things don't move. And you can hear something's clearly gone wrong inside of it. You know what, actually, go ahead, do me a favor. We're gonna pull the cap off of this regulator here. It's got two little screws. It'll be interesting to see how this thing works because this is an original voltage regulator for the car, to my knowledge. Wow, it's amazing those screws just fucking... Not even stuck, really, guys. Oh, wow. There's something what? A little piece of solder, a little solder ball. Set that in the cap, set the screws in the cap. Look at that, you can see the coil in there. I'm not exactly sure how it works or why it works, but you can see one side is soldered to the coil and the other side is soldered to the coil. This doesn't move, I would assume this stays still. Something in here is moving because we have a spring at the back. Now I'm trying to see what exactly went bad. It doesn't look like there's a break in the coil wire. That coil wire is still on there. Oh, I think I see it. Okay, if you guys look on the this side of it, we have a wire going from the top terminal here to the bottom terminal where the coil is. On the other side, we have the wire from the coil going in, and the wire at the top is melted and it's not going down to the bottom terminal. So I believe what happened is this wire got hot, melted out, and then we lost our connection down here at the coil, and then the voltage regulator stopped working. That's pretty insane how old this thing is. It'd probably work if I just soldered a wire from here to there. I'm probably not going to do that just because how old it is. I think we'll just get a new one, but that's pretty insane. Alright guys, so we got a new voltage regulator from Advanced Auto. There's the part number if you're interested. And you can see on the new regulators, I didn't know this, they switched over to solid state, so there's actually nothing in here mechanical to adjust. And apparently, according to the parts guy at the counter, they've been like this for 30 years. So this car had its original regulator on it. So we're gonna put this one on and see if the problem's fixed. It's actually really simple to get these on and off. You can see down here is the tab, so it's gonna mount like this. This side must be ground because it's got a ring terminal. So we'll grab this guy. It bolts straight to the firewall. Nothing crazy. Nothing too crazy. Then we'll just give it we go. It's plastic, so you don't want to over tighten it or you'll crack it. Let me grab a Phillips. Video sponsored by Icon. Not really, I just waste a bunch of money on their tools. And we're gonna have this tab up here that we have to take off. Parts holder. This is actually a lock washer. You can see it's got the little teeth cut into it. Grab this guy. This is our field wire, and then bottom's ignition. You can see they even labeled it ignition at the bottom, field at the top. Ignition looks like it's just gonna clip straight on. I heard it make noise actually. And field at the top. I'm upgraded to having a camera guy now. A la Big Steve.
Hell yeah.
Fucking camera operator extraordinaire. Okay, so really I could have saved myself from being stuck on the side of the road for a couple hours. We're about to find out. So now if we start the car, we should hopefully have 14 volts on the alternator. I'm going to give it gas. So I'm going to give it gas. Come on, car. Alright, so after you rev the fuck out of your car, okay. We're going to go back to volts direct current. We're going to pick a ground up here, like right here. We're going to go back to the stud on our alternator. Look at that. 14.2 volts, which is right where we should be. Our charging system's fixed. We're back on the road. That easy, guys. Voltage regulator the whole time. Check that first.